When someone asks, what are you or where are you from? What do you say?
I'm from Puerto Rico.
Black.
I was born in Bosnia.
I'm biracial.
Italian.
Arab.
Half Vietnamese and half American, white.
Black.
White mutt with some Native American mixed in.
German and English.
It's always just Italian when we do get asked.
Are there other nationalities that you have always identified with outside of Italian?
In March, we're Irish.
Right on. All right. Okay, so we're gonna do a little exercise. What we're gonna do is Heather will say a group of names, and then we're gonna have you hypothesize what you think you have in common.
Brianna, Carla, Siobhan, Issa, Jess, Kathy, Matt, Melissa, Sandy, and Tobin.
Okay, what do you think you have in common?
As part of Rethinking Race in 2017, we worked with Ancestry.com to take DNA samples from 30 members of our UA community. Before and after learning their results, the group engaged in a conversation about identity, race, and ethnicity. This is some of what they had to say.
I've never been treated differently because of my skin color, but I've been treated very poorly because of my hair color. And so can I take that and compare it to what you've experienced? Like, it's apples and oranges, right? But if we can take what it feels like to be treated differently and use that to find common ground, that's all that matters.
What we can tell from looking.
Have there been times where you were made to feel different or treated differently?
Oh, I've always been different. You know, all the girls had, Spanish names, and they were all Catalinas and Marias, and here I was Perzad.
I am Muslim, so I was covering my hair. I faced a lot of problems because of this. Because, of course, my accent is different, so I'm not from here. And I'm wearing hijab, so, of course, I'm Arab.
I was on the church bus, and there was this kid on the church bus who found out my sister and I were Vietnamese, we were Asian, and so he kept making fun of us by calling us Mulan, and I didn't understand because I'm like, why do I feel hurt when you're calling me my favorite Disney princess?
Growing up in Jordan, they would say soda loza, which literally translates to black nut.
When the cashier came over to me, I just kind of pointed and says, I'd like to see that ring. And she looked at me and she says, well, you know all of these rings are over $300.
In the 6th grade, there was this thing. It was light versus dark, like within the black people. And I was like, well, I'm not chocolate, but I'm not extremely light skinned. So even then, I was like, there was literally no one in my grade that was my color.
The first thing that one boy that was white, he asked me, he said, oh, I'll have a joke for you. What's white, black, and stinks? And I said, a skunk. And he said, no, a Puerto Rican.
We were trying to guess the ethnicity of somebody that we had met. And I was like, I think he's Arab, but I'm not sure. And he was like, well, check his fingers and make sure he's not missing any, indicating that he's a suicide bomber or like has created bombs or something.
So when did you first realize that there was racism in the world?
When I moved here, when I was 8 years old, over here it's more like what you look like.
As a black male, I was taught racism in a different way, that racism exists and racism is prevalent and that you better prepare yourself for it or you're going to lose in this society. America perceives me as black, so the really important question is, how do you perceive me?
I played tennis as a kid, so I was paired with a young man to play doubles. I was probably 10 years old or so. The young man was Indian, and the comments that we heard were startling, and I don't remember all the detail, but I do remember feeling like they don't think we should be here. You're the wrong kind of people.
But then I found out years later when I came back to Spain, and everybody would say like, oh, you and your sister were the famous Persian girls. We thought you guys were so exotic. I was like, really? And so that exotic, even though it's supposed to be flattering, is also, of course, signals you as an other.
Does knowing our DNA map change how we see ourselves?
Okay, what do you think you have in common? Iberian Peninsula.
Spain and Portugal.
Parzad, can you tell us again, I guess, how you're feeling finding out that you aren't biologically Spanish?
It's sort of ironic because people always say, oh, you know, Perzad, she's so European.
What we can tell from science.
Every time a child is born, you get 50% of your DNA from mom and 50% from your dad. So that also means that there's 50% of dad and 50% of mom that mom and dad have, but that you don't have. Over time, different pieces get passed down and different pieces get lost. When we look at your DNA, it's telling us just the random pieces of DNA that make you, you. The biology of you, your height and your metabolism, and you can whistle or curl your tongue, or the shape of your eyes and the color of your hair, all those millions of little pieces that make you you. But what we do is we look at those pieces that we can confidently identify as being specific to a region of the world and tell you what regions they're from.
So now that we know what I'm not, definitely not from the Iberian Peninsula, I'm excited to know what I am.
Okay.
7% Middle East only? Is that what that says?
Yes.
That's really interesting.
So what is your predominant ethnicity?
Caucasus.
That's Iran.
It's
so there's a ton of overlap between Middle Eastern and Caucasus. Caucasus, we identify as being Turkey, but it extends far east from that as well.
So that actually makes sense.
Americans of African descent, the average percentage of African DNA that they have is 72%.
I would not guess I'm that high. I would, if I had to put a number to it, I would not say 72.
Okay. Yeah. You're 85% African.
85? Golly, okay.
All my life, I thought I was 100% Indian, and now I'm like, wait, you know, like, is that even possible?
What is your initial reaction?
That's a lot of places. Like, that's a lot more than I thought it would be.
Ireland, 11%. Iberian Peninsula, 9%. Great Britain, 7%.
What percent African are you?
67% African.
Is that more or less than what you were expecting?
I think that was about what I was thinking.
Really?
But one thing I don't see here, though, is Native American.
And that's something that you had grown up hearing?
I'm pretty sure. My great-grandmother was part Native American. Her name was Mamu.
That's something that a lot of people hear, is that they have an ancestor that was Native American. And so while those cultural echoes have come through, genetically, they have not. They have become diluted over time. That doesn't mean that the stories that you were told were not true, but it does mean that biologically, that's not something that you've inherited.
Gotcha.
Okay, 97% Europe, 60% Great Britain, 21% Irish, 10% Iberian Peninsula, only 3% Italian.
People that are from Italy usually have these other regions as well, but 3% is still not a lot.
No, it's not.
It might just mean that you just didn't inherit those pieces.
I got the question, how much of a percentage of African would you consider black? And I put a percentage in my head, but I didn't tell you. I'll write it down.
So do you want to see that first?
Sure.
You're 35% African.
Okay.
By your perception yesterday, are you black?
I'm black.
Okay. All right. So this is your map of the world. So we'll have you start at the top.
So European Jewish, I'm 26%. That's surprising. Wow.
26% Jewish.
Sound like Drake. I mean, it's a shock. I mean, that was the last thing I expected.
Darnell, you are the most Jewish person that we tested out of this group.
Wow. I got to convince my family now that we're Jews. So.
There's the ethnicity estimate and there's the cousin matches.
Okay.
Right? So I'm going to have you take a look at your cousin matches.
Show me.
You have 109 pages.
Oh my God.
So these are people that you can message and that you can bring into your family circle because they are your family. Okay.
Ooh.
That's fine.
So 72 Europe East, 26% Italy and Greece, trace regions 2% in Finland, Northwest Russia. That's exciting, actually.
Why is that exciting?
Well, like I mentioned before, I'm obsessed with like the Nordic regions, so I really like Finland being in there.
The other thing that you mentioned yesterday was that there were these rivalries within
Bosnia and Serbia.
Right.
Yeah.
And you asked, would they be different?
Right.
And what does that tell you?
Not really.
Ethnically, from like a biology standpoint, they're the same.
Yeah, I wish everyone over there would understand that.
What we can tell from listening.
It's just been really incredible to see such a diverse group of people and how they all share, that same vulnerability and how that comes from, paradoxically from outside, from people who actually don't really even know who they are.
I honestly thought that was one of the best conversations I've ever had in my life because I think just connecting with other people like this, we really can make a difference.
To realize that I'm not the only one with some Asian background and I share other things with people. I'm starting to realize that this idea of belonging to one type of thing isn't exactly right.
So I don't really believe in race myself. I believe that it's a social construct. I think that it's like a boogeyman in the back of our mind.
I was expecting that if someone living in a good country, everything from outside is so sparkly and nice, but deep inside, no, everyone already is having lots of problems.
I don't feel alone anymore. I don't at all.
If everyone in the world could take this test, maybe then they wouldn't be so bitter.
What can we tell? What can we tell from looking? What can we tell from the science? What can we tell from listening? Much of what children learn about race is taught to them by their parents. It may be protective.
I was telling my children, yes, at home, from the door in, todo español. From the door out in school, it could be in English, right? And if I talk to you in Spanish at school, that's fine. But if you hear me talk to you in English, follow my lead, because we may be at risk.
It may be unwitting.
Like once you get told something enough, you start to believe that about yourself, especially if no one else is validating that or saying that it's false. So then once that becomes in the family structure, then it just keeps going generation through generation.
It may be destructive.
I live in an apartment building and I didn't have my keys. And I saw this little girl that was at the mailbox. And I knocked on the door. I was like, can you please let me in? So she ran over to the door. And when she was about to open the door, her dad called her from all the way back in the hall and told her that she couldn't open the door for me. It's fine with me that you didn't open the door, but you just introduced your daughter to racism.
What can we tell our children?